Good afternoon, friend of David Virgo's. We go back to probably our community prayer breakfast that we were just discussing where we actually met at. And then from there, I think we discussed, I might have mentioned something about my real estate career that I work in, and then he talked about his, I guess, architect, engineering type background. And so that's kind of, so we've been, we pretty much see each other on a monthly basis and pray for our community and pray for our city, our government leaders. So important for Augusta and throughout our state, nation, and world. So it's he asked me if I'd share just a little bit of a testimony, and I'll do that today. My background is, right now, I do commercial real estate, and it's been a long road to get to where I'm at now. I worked in a chemical plant for almost 20 years, but as growing up, my dad was military, and he was gone a lot, and his assignments, he'd be gone for maybe a year or plus at a time. My neighborhood, when he went, I would be a wayward son. I was the oldest of 5. And so when he would go, I would kind of be buck wild and do stuff that I probably stuff I shouldn't have done. And I had a sister who was valedictorian, and I had ADHD, and so I think a lot of people end up in prison in my age group, and probably many others that have ADHD type stuff. There's a frustration that happens when you can't learn good, and I think we see it in prisons on a regular basis. I did prison ministry for 20 some odd years, and not knowing, and how we found out I had the ADHD was through my daughter when she was in like kindergarten. She was kind of bouncing all over the place, and then they recommended we have her tested, and then we went and had her tested. I said, wow, that's just the same thing I got, and I was in my 50s. 47 when I had her. She's at the University of Alabama now, Roll Tide. We're all Georgia Bulldogs. That's a little bit off track there. But anyway, so those frustrations that I had, I think, in those days, so I couldn't learn good, and I didn't do well in school. That wasn't my cup of tea like my sisters. One was a reader, one was very smart, and then me and my brothers, we were kind of the construction type guys that really kind of struggled with the school aspect of it. But through that, my neighborhood, we had a little wake for one of my friends growing up, Renee, and it was kind of amazing to see 50 years later, there was probably 7 or 8 guys that were there, and all different stages of life, success. And you know what the neat thing of that was is that it was just like yesterday that we really just cared about each other as friends growing up in a neighborhood. About how successful or how much money we had, any of that. Is just, and I looked around the room as we were talking, and I could see those guys just thinking about some of the things that we had, the relationships we had, checking on people, asking about people. It was really pretty cool, and that was just a few months ago, and we've committed that we'll do that at least once a year, maybe more, because a lot of us are still around this community. But anyway, through that neighborhood and Dad being gone, there was a lot of pot smoking and those kinds of things, and so that kind of was the journey that I had, and then that eventually led to me selling dope at a relatively early age at around 13 or 14 years old, and I was probably a head taller than most of my friends at that age, and they used to call me Big Matt. Went to a private school up on the hill, St. Mary's on the hill, and so I was around God, but never really knew God, but I don't know if I've ever committed my life to Him in that stage of my life. So when Dad would come home, he would I'd grow long hair, and still smoking pot and those kinds of things. And by being the oldest son, it was like I was a letdown to him, because you're supposed to carry the mark of the oldest son. He always used to tell me, he said, Matt, you need to use your head something besides a hat rack. But anyway, he did the best he could with what he had when he came home, and he tried. Matter of fact, he had a tough upbringing too, so I think that was some of the things I may have inherited from him. So through that, I was arrested probably first time 17, 18 years old. They raided my mom and dad's house, got my dope, and I was put on probation. And that was the start. They put me on probation, so I kind of went straight for a couple of years, but being in the same environment, I think that's where a lot of people get lost at, is that they might do well, or they go to prison or do something, and then they go back to the same environments, and it's kind of setting them up for failure, because if you don't have the mechanisms or the right kind of support in your life, you tend to go back to those things that you know well. So through all those journeys, and I got back into drugs and party life and all of that. I kind of stayed in shape a lot when I was off and on through those years. And when it seemed like your addiction grows worse as you get involved in those things. And so through the pot and drinking, and then there was LSD, and there was mescaline and THC and all these other things, powder, and methamphetamine was one of the last things that was really something that really kind of took me down. I started selling dope, and then it's not good for dealers to be sellers or users, so I say. So that was part of the process that I went through with that. And so back and forth, they raided my house again, and pretty much flushed all the stuff down. So that next time they came back, they informants and those kind of things that were working against me. And they shut off my water, and then I got arrested. And I had a 15-year probated sentence for the first time, and then the second time they had, I got a 15-year prison sentence. And it was through my time going to prison that I got saved in the county jail before I went to prison. There was a guy that had been in prison, and he came and shared his testimony. And, we all have testimonies in our lives, and I think that when we can relate to somebody that has a similar story to ours, it really gives us hope, and that's what it was for me. Because as I said earlier, I didn't really walk with God in a way to really get to know Him, put Him first in my life, as I do now. And so when he shared his testimony about what God did in his life, I said, God, I'd really like to have what He has and get my life back in track and in order. So I surrendered my life to the Lord when I was in the county jail, and through that process, while I was in the county jail, there was an attempted rape in my cell block, and I broke that attempted rape up. It was some older men that had been in and out of prison all their lives, and a young guy. And so some of the other leaders in that cell block came and got me and said, Aitken, you need to do something about that. So I went by, and they were in a different cell, so I checked on it, and I just told them to get out of here, leave this guy alone. So that was the start. I did an investigation in that. I got to meet the administration, the sheriff, and all that, Sheriff Webster, at the county jail here in Augusta. And through that process, that was able to be a trustee. After that, they put me in. And normally they don't let trustees as dope dealers in the mix in that way, because you got a lot of connections. You might get dope into the jail or something like that. But they gave me a break, and I was. I remember I worked in the property room, and the property room people would come to jail, and we would issue them new clothes, new jail uniform clothes, and we'd take theirs and bag it up. But one guy came in there, and he had crack cocaine in his mouth, where they would arrested him and put it in his mouth, and they didn't know he had it in his mouth. So he gave us some, and we smoked it. And that was the last time I did dope, was in that jail. We've all kind of made bargains with God, and that's what I did. I said, Lord, if you let me come down and not get in any trouble, I won't ever do it again. Because through that process, me having that job and the chief believing in me, I felt like I let God down, I let the chief down, and I let myself down too. So that was the last of the dope. And from there, I started walking with the Lord, going to church, praying, learning to pray, those kinds of things. God had always put people in my life to help me along as I would go through life. But sometimes God allows us to walk it alone, to trust Him, to count on Him, and allow Him to do what He needs to do in us and through us. So through that journey into prison, which I stayed probably 14 months total prison time, jail time I did, and got out in 1990. On April Fool's Day, I had to ask the warden a couple of times, are you sure I'm getting out on April 1st, April Fool's Day? He said, yes, you are, Matt. So I came out, but I had to rebuild everything because I never really studied, didn't have a career, didn't have any real academic gifting. So I started working construction. Through there, we got a job as a truck driver. And the guy that hired me as a truck driver, he was a real savvy businessman. He worked for Ryder Corporation. He's a big dog. Had a suit and tie on. I remember he always had real shiny shoes. He was a classy guy, and it always spoke to me. I had to be honest, because if you're not honest about what your past is in certain scenarios, then it'll come back to haunt you. So sometimes it may cost you too. And so I was honest about my background, and his name was Nick. And he had a real deep Yankee voice, and he said, Matt, the reason I hired you because you was honest. And so I got to work there, and then I ended up getting the CDL license, and I went to pursue truck driving. And the guy at Superior Carriers in Augusta, Terrell Washburn, he really believed in me. It took me about 6 months, and I had no experience. We get these degrees and credentials and licenses, and we don't have no experience. You got to find someone who's going to give you a break to do that. So I was able to drive and do spot work at Olin Chemical, and I was really grateful for Terrell and that. And I used to send him a Christmas card for about 10 years every Christmas. Thank you for really believing in me. And he had his own struggles, so maybe I was an encouragement to him through those years of supporting me. And so I thank him for that. And so from there, I ended up actually getting on with Olin Corporation. I kept knocking on doors, and in order to be successful, you got to keep knocking on doors, even when there's setbacks and people don't believe in you, or just the door slams. But you got to keep knocking. And I think that's where a lot of people give up. But I didn't, and through that process, I ended up getting on with Olin, and my salary doubled, and it was just a phenomenal job. It was shift work, and I ended up staying in that job with all the difficulties I had there because of my ADHD and that kind of thing. Went through cancer when I was there, went through hepatitis C when I was there, so they had good medical benefits and took good care of me, and the pay was good, so I was really grateful for that, especially by me coming out of prison and having an opportunity to work in a job like that. And then through that, there was opportunities for ministry. I engaged in the community, and I think sometimes in my drug world, I was kind of looking to find a place, and I think that's what happens to a lot of people. We try to find our place in other things or venues that we may not have elsewhere. And I know our young people in gangs and stuff like that, and that's kind of the scenario there. So I got married and divorced. I got out. Remarried for almost 20 years now, and I got a daughter, 18, Cecilia, and I was 47 when I had her, and I was scared to death. Didn't think I had enough money to raise her. Matter of fact, she's asking for money today in college for gas. But anyway, she's a great daughter, and just to have been able to teach her the ropes, the streets, and all that. She's got the academic side of her mom and her cousins and her aunts, all of them smart as whips, so she's got both sides, and I think, having that balance of streets creed that I've taught her, and then the academic side of it, we're kind of like two peas in the pod, because we're both got ADHD and get in trouble a lot. So I wouldn't trade that for anything, and matter of fact, she'll be coming home this weekend. So that's kind of my journey, so I thank you for taking a minute to listen to my story and my testimony, and thank David for allowing me to be just a few minutes here on camera. Wish you the best, and reach out to him if he can ever help you, or I can, and where you may be.